If you thought sticker shock at the car dealership was bad, just wait until you leave the nursery with that bundle of joy. Let's hop back into the void of intelligence. Before we get started, let me just put a disclaimer on this topic. Today we're going to talk about the cost of raising a child from beginning up until college. Now, for those that are faint of heart, you might want to click away now. For those that like a little danger, a little suspense, I suggest you stick around. And for those of you all who may think of different options or may not want to go that route, I'm pretty sure that we could substitute child for a favorite pet, and some of this may apply. But if you're still here, let's get started. So in general, the United States, the average cost of raising a child through the age of 17 is $233,610. This figure is based on data compiled in the most recent expenditures on children by families report completed by the United States Department of Agriculture. What's more, the estimated cost of raising a baby is based on a married couple with 2 children supporting the family on a median income. The report says that a family raising an only child in the same income bracket can expect to pay an average of 27% more than a 2-child family. For parents, this creates added pressure to have a dependable income to raise their child or children from a baby to adulthood. Okay, having a panic attack yet? Calm down. Deep breaths, get a paper bag, it's going to be okay. Now, so a lot of the times the old folks say, when are you going to have that next one? When are you going to have that third? When are you going to have that boy? When are you going to have that girl? When are you going to have that 5th child? All that's to say is that sometimes the cost for having one may be more than the cost of having many. And that may lead to the spoiling of that said only child. But there may be a little truth to that, because a lot of the times too, whenever you have one child instead of multiple child, then you don't really have to worry about spreading the wealth per se. That child usually going to get whatever they ask for. That child is usually going to be treated more on the level of adult financially. There's less of a stress, and you probably going to want to include the child more in some of these adult activities. So more than likely, you might want to take that child on that getaway vacation because it's only one instead of 6 of them. You may want to splurge a little bit more and get that child a large instead of a medium fry at your local restaurant. Sometimes you may take that child out to more expensive dining, like your sushi restaurants, instead of your round the corner burger joint that comes with a I guess a satisfactory meal, something like that. But there's a little truth to say. I think when you have more children, a lot of the times your belt is going to get tightened a little bit more. But also it helps you to learn to budget. It also helps you learn to be equal, and it also lets you have a little bit of a gauge, because not all children are alike. I mean, honestly, I've got 3, and not 2 of the 3 children are the same. They have similar qualities, but I know that each one has their own personality. And with that being said, they kind of bounce off of each other, and it kind of keeps you grounded into 1, not playing favorites, 2, not giving one more than the other, and 3, being able to budget, because you just never know when that surprising expenditure is going to come where you're going to need to have a little extra dough in your pocket. So a lot of the times, the more you have, the better you are, for my opinion, because once you have that first one, the seal is already broken, and there's not much more that a second, a third, or a 12th child can do to surprise you. You know what I'm saying? Let's get into more numbers. In the beginning, there were the birds and the bees. And when the birds got together with the bees, they made sweet honey, and things happened. That was old school. And now, thankful to medicine and other things that are going on in the world, other opportunities, we do have more options in regards to raising a child, bringing a child into the world, or something pre-made. I mean, it's no different than making a cake from scratch, or getting a cake mix from a box, or going to the bakery and having cake already made. Same thing we have to do with child rearing and child creation these days. So we do live in a time where you do have options, and sometimes one option is better than other options. Sometimes all three are options, depending on your lifestyle and depending on what you feel that you're capable of as a parent or an adult for that matter. So, birth and adoption, two basic options. Depending on your situation, adding a new child to your family can cost as much as raising it. For those with employer-based health insurance, the average total cost that patients paid for maternity care was $4,500. Patients without insurance will face higher costs by magnitudes, around $30,000 to $50,000. Parents who learn that they're expecting or plan to become pregnant should first make sure they have adequate insurance. Make sure to revisit your options either through your employer-provided coverage or the Affordable Care Marketplace during the open enrollment period. Okay, that was a slight plug for the ACA or any type of other insurance that can actually help a ton. One thing that I never realized was that how much it costs to bring a child into the world. Okay, guess what? In order to create a child, it may not cost more than having a back seat and maybe extra value meal. These days, you have to think past conception for those who can conceive. We'll get to the next part later. We're talking about conception. Conception is the easy part. In order to conceive, you just don't have to have contraception. You know what I'm saying? Conception is the first step into having a child. And though we may think that's the easiest part, it is the easiest part. Childbirth, you may think, is just going into the hospital like you see on the television shows and you're huffing and puffing and you're taking the Lamaze classes. Breathe, breathe, push, push, breathe, breathe, push, push. Baby comes into the world, you go about your business. Stop. It's a business, everyone. It's a business. From that first doctor's appointment or wellness visit, if you have insurance, that's why a lot of times people always talk about having employment, having employer-based insurance, because it makes it so much easier to just show up with your card and pay that first copay, and then here comes your charge account. And that charge account is going to have every visit through the 20th week where you find out what the baby is, and your wellness check through the ultrasounds and seeing if the baby's going to come out right, and all this other XYZ and everything from the mother all the way up until going into the hospital, having the delivery room ready for you, whether you're using a ball, whether you're using a pool, whether you're using a swing, whether you're squatting, whether you're sitting, whether you're standing up, whether you're walking, whether you're on a walker or a stroller or a wheelchair, up until the baby pops out. Cut the umbilical cord or cut mom to get baby out if baby's coming out the wrong way. All of those things are going to be set up in this little account. And for those who have insurance, all you're going to have to do is worry about the initial copay, any copays after that, making sure that you met your deductible, of course. And then after that, insurance should take care of the rest. Now, we talked about healthcare in the previous episode as far as mental health is concerned, but we have to let you know and make sure that the expenses that come along with all this stuff, because with every prick, prod, heart monitor, blood pressure test, somebody's got to pay for it. God bless you if you have an employer with insurance that all you have to do is pay a fraction of those costs. But for those who don't, they're going to have to pay out of pocket. And if you live under the waterline, you may be able to get that done through government aid, government assistance, or whatnot. So birth to adoption is not so much, birth is not so much as hard if you have the things in place. And that's why a lot of the time it can be discouraging where people are talking about insurance over let's have a baby and get up. So the googly eyes and the big eyes just tend to flatten whenever you start talking about the dollars and cents. But that's one option. Option two, adoption. Of course, we see all this in the real world where you go and you see a couple journey across the world and they're looking for this magical child that's going to change their life. Because in essence, it's never going to be where somebody's going to knock on the door and there's going to be a picnic basket with a pretty baby on it, or it's going to be like Moses, where I was washing clothes in the river and here comes this baby floating by. You're going to have to go out and find the child, either through an adoption agency or some type of third party, in order to legally adopt a child. Now, for those who do that, there are costs and paperwork and all types of red tape to go through. And through a private agency, the average cost may be somewhat in the ballpark of $43,000. Makes you almost want to go ahead and try conception the old-fashioned way, but for some that may not be an option, especially for those that are in same-sex relationships, male-male, where there's no possibility for surrogacy because, hello, biology, hopefully I don't have to teach you that. But for those, it is also a great opportunity to give a child a second chance, because a lot of the times these children may either come from broken homes, or just plain flat in general may not have been wanted, or tragedy has struck them to where they will never have the opportunity to be raised by the people that created them, and that's a sad thing. But adoption, done correctly, and adoption with a good heart is also a great thing, because it gives both parents, loving parents that couldn't do things naturally, their opportunity to love something as if they're own, and it also gives a child a second chance, or even a first chance, to get that love that every child does deserve to grow and develop. Let's talk about surrogacy for those that have that ability. So when we're talking about surrogacy, we're mainly talking about either people who cannot conceive, or we're talking about same-sex couples who have the tools in order to carry a child. Now, the extra cost to become parents may require fertility treatments or services that may run for $500 per sperm donation, up to $75,000 or more for just surrogacy. Now, somebody's going to say, hey, I got a buddy, and they don't mind carrying my child. How can we just go ahead and do that? Well, you can go ahead and do that. It's not a problem. But these days, people, and I've heard in instances where people were surrogates, and then all of a sudden, then they wanted their child back. So they went through the fertilization, and then the woman that was carrying the child ultimately wanted to keep the child, and then you ran into all type of legal battles. So with that being said, it's almost better to go the legal route, because at least with that case, you might have less trouble. But I always feel from that standpoint, unless you're a professional, which is hard to be a professional, when you got to do so much as carry another life for 9 months, give birth to it, and then say, hey, okay, here you go. Nice doing business with you. I don't think you can really put a price tag on something like that. I would never know that because I'm not a mother, but I think I might be able to feel some sort of way if I was a dad and I donated sperm and that person ended up, and you knew of the person, and you know them, watching them growing up, and hey, let's say this person becomes a NFL superstar. Then you feel like, well, you know what, those are my genes technically, and I might feel some sort of way. And then you come knocking on the door, and everyone's going to end up either on Dr. Phil or on Maury Povich. It's just one of those things where if you're mature enough, that's an option. But for those who may not be able to get all the people on the same page in regards to that, you may just want to go and take the adoption route, because you might see a little bit less of that in the adoption route of people wanting their children back. But at least they know for a fact the whole process and how things came to be. It's going to be a long sit down and talk over coffee whenever you're talking about yes, I'm your parent, but I'm not your parent. Essentially, you were put inside someone, and you were birthed by another person. So it's a pretty complicated conversation to have. So with that being said, we've got our 3 options. We have birth, we have adoption, we've got surrogacy. Wow. Are we tired yet? And we've only spent $4,000, right? Man. Here's some statistics for you. In regards to the breakdown, food, 18% is spent on children, childcare, education, 16%, transportation, 15%, healthcare, 9%, clothing, 6%, miscellaneous, 22%. So that's the percentages of a basic income of a family that's geared towards raising a child. Let's go into that a little bit further. Food cost per child, $2,794, give or take a few bucks a year, depending on if you want large, medium, or small fries with that. After housing, food is the next highest cost of raising a child in the United States Department of USDA report, taking up 18% of a family's spending on kids. That's quite natural. One thing that any life form is going to do, they're going to need shelter, they're going to need food. So with food being the second on the list, makes a lot of sense. But we think about food, everyone's got to eat, everyone's going to eat, so everyone will eat out of the same pot. But for the first couple years, when all the child can do is have formula, that may be one of those initial entry fees that is going to cost new parents a little bit more and a little bit out of the budget that they wouldn't normally be spending on themselves. Take that into consideration. Housing, for that matter, everyone's got to live somewhere. Only difference is going to be a matter of, will we be able to create more space for this life form, or are we going to be sharing the existing space that we already had? Now, you're going to hear the stories from your grandparents talking about, well, we lived and we slept 8 to a room, 9 to a room. We slept head to foot, foot to head, and always complaining about somebody peeing in the bed and ruining it for everyone. That is not something that was of the past. That can still happen today based upon income, based upon space, and based upon the amount of people in that family. Childcare and education is always my favorite. And of course, we may have to just have an episode on that, because childcare and education cost for a child can almost be anywhere around the neighborhood of $37,000 in a child's lifetime. With childcare being a significant cost, it can fluctuate quite a bit depending on your child's age and needs. Parents with preschool age kids spend the most on childcare and education. Surprise! From 6 weeks to pre-K, preschool, kindergarten age in some states, well, you don't necessarily need pre-K, so we can say up to kindergarten age from 6 weeks until then. Childcare is one of the biggest hurdles, one of the biggest financial, I'm not going to say pits. One of the biggest financial restraints in a budget is going to be childcare and putting your child in a proper preschool. And the problem with that is that, one, there's always competition. You may always drive down the road and see that there's a child care center on every corner. So now, as a parent, especially a mother, which one's the best for my child? Is it the most expensive? I know it's not the least expensive. What do I do? So now we get the point to where, just like with shopping as a consumer, I must do my research to see, okay, who have I known that's been there? What are you doing with my child? And once they get to the point where they're crawling and walking, and now they're in that in-between stage where they actually have to start learning something, because you have to be educated before you become educated in school. What will you be teaching my child based upon the amount of money that I'm giving you? So now we're paying for accreditation, we're paying for space, we're paying for the food that they're going to be using, the nutrition program, we're going to be paying for the level of teaching that's going to be in that program. We also might be paying for the neighborhood. We're probably going to be paying for the curriculum in some instances. So we feel, and especially in some cases of those that are educators, that are parents, we feel that if it costs money, it's worth something, because we have to pay for all these things for them to provide to my child. Another burden, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally also. So that's a huge, significant cost. And the only time that that does get taken off your shoulders whenever a child is in school age, because at that point, now they're going to go into the system. Now, to further complicate things, you have people to where, does my child need to go in the local school, or do they need to go in the private school? Do they need to go in parochial school? So now we have the same issue again, and now it makes it worse, is that not public education is now in competition with private education, parochial education. So now it's who is the best of the best, and who's going to do the best for my child? When I'm pretty simple, y'all. Think about this. I pay taxes. Taxes are supposed to provide me with protection, police, fire department, all those local municipal agencies, and education. I shouldn't have to go and pay for an education when I'm already paying for an education in my taxes. So for some, they may rather move somewhere than pay for a private education. Me, I say this: if I have to pay for a private education, I'm paying for two educations because I'm paying taxes. So I am putting money into the local school, but I'm also arrogant enough to be able to send my child to a private school or another school on top of the school that I'm already paying for. So, after a certain point, you may feel that you've got 3, 4, 5 children. You're doing that X5, X6. Childcare will add up, and then at this point, you are going to be at the point where they better be doing something positive with my kids, or I'm going to go and I'm going to shut the school down. Once the children enter school, spending in this category typically falls because at the youngest age, it's a little bit more expensive than once you get into private school. And hopefully, as they get into a private education or a subsidized education where you're still paying a little bit out of your pocket, that they will be supplementing that child with something else, whether it's a pre-college training, all these extracurricular activities, things that your child can take advantage of, and not just sitting down, having a cot to sleep on, getting their milk that you're providing to them on time, keeping them safe. The loophole that no one ever really wants to talk about is when you pay for childcare, it is often so that you can go to work. Isn't that something? I have to pay to go to work, and I have to go to work to pay for the child care. Loops. I hate loops because what happens is you never know where the weak point is that you can break the loop and then break free of the cycle. So, especially when it comes to working mothers. I just carried you 9 months. And in 6 weeks, I have to go back to work. And in 6 weeks, I have to find somewhere suitable enough to you that I feel that you can stay until I can retire or you're a grown up. It's pretty scary. No wonder you got things like postpartum, because you're thinking about other things besides caring for the child or recovery. Come on, government, universal health care. We need more time off for women. We also need time off for men if we can, because that would help even more in that situation. My goodness. So now other options that you may see, $800 on average to go to a child care center, up to $2,400 for a nanny. Isn't that something? And at the same time you're paying for that nanny, you're probably going to have that person eating your snacks and watching your TV and doing all this other stuff that you wouldn't do. Thank goodness. And one positive in the pandemic, I was able to work from home, and also being able to watch my daughter has been such a blessing, because it proves two things: that the work week and the work day is even though it's traditional, I think it's a little archaic to where, outside of basic business hours, the ability to get the work done can be done around the clock. Okay, being a parent is around the clock, so you can make those two things work if you really had to, and I'm living proof of that. So, with the cost across ages 0 to 17 combined, the total price tag averages $37,376. So that is from daycare to graduating high school. Transportation, really not that big of a deal, because as a result, transportation accounts for, even though 15% of families' total spending on average per USDA, which is about $2,000 a year. Let's talk about this. Anywhere that you're going to go, the child's going to have to go with you until a certain point, whether it's sports, extracurricular activities, or them having a car. That is going to be the only time where they're going to have individual transportation that is not included in the total package of what the whole family uses as transportation. Healthcare. 9% of the cost for children, about $1,168 per year. This include out-of-pocket costs for health insurance premium and family's portion of medical bills. If you have a regular day job, this does not affect you because you have an account. You're going to be spending a little bit more for a family on that account than you would just being a couple or being just an individual. Okay? And here's the kicker. Once you have one child, you are considered a family. So you can have one or you can have 50. You're probably going to pay the same amount in regards to deduction from your check for health care. So also another incentive to have more kids. You notice a pattern here? Breaking into the system usually costs the most in regards to spending. But once you break into the system and you go from couple or single to family, then you will always be a family. And that's the one benefit, even when it comes to tax deductions and taxes and getting money back at the end of the cycle. More children, more benefits. Whether or not that was planned, whether or not that's underlying plot, who knows? I mean, if you are a conspiracy theorist, then you would say that in the beginning, the United States probably has the best plan in regards to child suppression, or the best plan into family control, because they just make it so doggone expensive to where you don't want to have kids. But once you start having them, the brakes start to load up. Now, guess what? Government may look at towards them and be like, that could potentially be another person in our military, or that could potentially be someone in our forces that are going to help protect us from the rest of the world. So we'll take a chance on paying for this, that, and the other in hopes that they give us their time, their money, hopefully not their lives, in repayment to the United States of America. Let's talk about the last part, miscellaneous goods. Miscellaneous goods and services account for 7% of spending, basically. That includes spending on personal items, extracurricular activities, equipment, sports stuff, media players, video games, entertainment, reading materials, whatever the kids fancy, however it gets tickled, that's what's going to be under the miscellaneous part. Haircuts for guys, hair parlors for girls, nails, whatnot. Add all that together, and that's going to be about 22% of what parents spend on one child, about $2,800 a year. Low income versus middle class and upper class. Let's talk about this. It's a big, important topic because low income families spend less per child. One, there's less to spend, so you're going to spend less per child. Two, if you're low income, you're probably going to get subsidized in some way, shape, or form, whether that's free lunch at school, or you're going to be subsidized with more tax breaks, things like that of that nature. Subsidization at our daycares, which I've seen where, yes, you might not be spending per se out of your pocket, you're getting subsidized by the government. Upper class, you don't need help. Upper class, you can already afford it because of your will, because of your God-given ability to make money, or your blessing to have a business or something that have made you very wealthy and well off, and that's good. Congratulations. You might not need that much help in regards to passing your child through that same system. However, you're probably going to be spending money on that upper crust education, or probably on food, probably on things like transportation, the best of the best, of course. So naturally, you got more disposable income. You're going to be disposing more of that disposable income. Middle class, squeezed right in the middle. We don't make enough to do it all on our own, but we're going to take a little bit of our money to help the lower income. Some people may call that socialism. Some people may call that our American system, but that's how it's always been. Until we get the Robin Hood effect, where the rich pays for the poor and the middle stays in the middle, then it's going to be that, where it's almost easier to take the middle class because the majority of the population is in the middle class. Maybe 70% of the people are in the middle class, with single digits in the upper class and the rest in the lower class. So with that being said, the subsidization is a little uneven. So we're going to feel a little bit more of a crunch in the middle class, because the middle class is going to be supporting the weight of their own family and those who can't support themselves. So that way we might see a little bit of grief, a little bit of anger, a little bit of backlash from those in the middle class. I work so hard, yet I don't get anything in return. So you're telling me to either lie about my income in order to get subsidization by other fellow middle class people, or the government, or get another job. It's not fair. It's not fair that I do okay or I'm very good at being average, that I have to go out and do more to support those who are understand the system, may or may not be scamming the system, but they're in a situation to where they're benefiting from someone else putting the hard work in. That's just something we have to fix the government in general, and that's another day for another topic. As we come to a close, it does cost to have kids and support a family, and that can be very, very intimidating. However, it should not be too overwhelming because most of these costs will be the same, give or take a few dollars to simply support yourself or your spouse. The only difference is the initial cost of maintaining a baby or toddler. You know, that can also be a little shell shocking. Formula, diapers, daycares, though overwhelming, are only temporary costs. Once you get past the initial adjustments of having a baby, you are adding only one more plate to the dining room table, pouring one extra cup of Kool-Aid for a meal, and having one extra roommate to account for. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, everything is going to cost in this world. Do you think of it as an investment, or do you think of it as a cost? That's your personal preference. And for those who may think of it as a financial burden, I might suggest a fund for any new addition. And it's not just talking about a college education fund. We're talking about a fund for diapers, clothes, daycare, until you get to a point where these costs, these temporary costs, disappear. Or it will help supplement your financial budget in the case of things happening around your own home. Because here's the thing, with all spending, you got to make sure that you have a little left over in case of an emergency. The birth of a child or the creation of a family does not constitute the same as an emergency cost. Let's be more responsible if we want to have children. And I'm not saying that to say that, well, you know what, let's plan every minute of our life. Children are wonderful. It's just the adults. They have to be a little bit more fiscally responsible in the world that we live in today. Because I know some people that can live off of love, but the majority of us cannot live off of love alone. And then that's when you see the amount of stress and strife creep into the household, and then we start to have a negative vibe and a funk in the whole domicile region. I might suggest the fund. Now, that's only temporary. But also, having children shows families where and when they need to cut back. And those families always find ways to do so. And having kids can remind parents to base their spending on their own specific financial situation and needs, and not on comparison to others' families' budgets or spending habits. Do not keep up with the Joneses. The Joneses will get you in trouble, and the Joneses are not you. So you may think that you're keeping up with them and they're happy. You may go into closed doors and find out that it is not the case. So you may not need an SUV when it's only 3 of you guys. You may not need to go and eat out 3 times a week. You may not need a 6-bedroom house. Because with that being said, you're going to want to do other things like have moments instead of things, because moments are more priceless than the things you may buy. Take that into consideration. Cost of parenting will change over time and typically increase as kids get older. Kids are the cheapest from ages 6 to 8, averaging $12,350 per year, and spending peaks at ages 15 to 17 at $13,900. Remember, that's averaging. Okay. The portion of most parents' income will also increase over time. Keep a job, parents, as best as you can. Keep a job, and if you keep a job, hopefully, with inflation comes increase of income. However, the cost of the child will increase also. I'm going to put on my dad hat. Children are wonderful. I love babies. I love them so much. I love them up until the point where not to the point where they can start talking, because they're still wonderful when they can start talking. Once they have opinions, that's the point where I'm like, but that's just me personally, and I'm kidding. They're all wonderful. I love my children. And one thing to take with all of this is that do not let any of this deter you from starting a family. creating a family. Whether you're straight, same sex, unable to conceive, unable to create, unable to carry, there are always ways to create a family, whether it's adoption through CASA Formation, CASA foundations, any other adoption agencies that are out there. You know, helping out family members, being a good aunt or uncle is also a good way, a godparent. Being a father figure or mother figure in the community, volunteering. You don't necessarily have to be blood in order to be a parental figure, and for some, that might be best for those that might not have the commitment or may not even be prepared to raise a child of their own. But there are all sorts of ways in order to be an influence in some young child's life. You just have to find that way, find that thing, find that knack, whether it's coaching or whether it's being a sponsor of something. Find that knack in order to touch some child's life. Because I feel like this, all children, when they're born, no matter how they get here, the potential is limitless. Just think about all the bountiful harvests out in the world. Your cane fields or your corn fields, or you rode past the street, you see all these beautiful, bountiful harvests of things. Remember, they started as a single seed, and that's a child, that's a baby, and that's the creation, that's conception. Once that child is born, just like that first sprout, a little love and time and support sown into that seed and that little crop, that little seedling, is all you need to produce something that may benefit all of mankind. You don't know whenever you first conceive a child, that person may become the President of the United States of America, or a world record holder, or a gold medalist, or an Olympian, or regardless, whatever they do, whatever they turn out to be, they are special because they were created from you, and they were created from the love that you and some other person had in that conception process, or created by the love that you put into someone that may not have been yours, but you filled that void and you helped that child become something that they wouldn't have been able to become on their own, and in turn it will help you become a better person. And I know, as much trouble as my kids may give me, I tell them this, that I'm only as good as I am because of you. And I appreciate you for that. I appreciate you for making me harder. I appreciate you for making me more thrifty. I appreciate you for making me more enlightened in regards to being educated on things. I appreciate you more for helped me have an open mind, when without you I'd probably be stuck in my ways, or just wanting to be a child myself forever. So children are wonderful in aspects where they show you who you are if you give them a chance and you put into them as much as you put into yourself. So when we talk about the financial aspect of it, and that figure that it costs to raise a child from birth until college, $233,610 is nothing in compared to the memories, the moments, and the life that a child may bring into your life and into your family. So with that being said, next time you go home, look at your little bundles of financial burdens and tell them that you love them, and tell them that they're priceless. Thank you for joining me in the void of intelligence. Thank you for joining me today on the Void of Intelligence. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe this video. Your opinion means a lot, so don't forget to also drop a comment at the bottom, and I'll be sure to reply to every one of your responses.